Hey everyone, a slightly different video for you guys today. I've seen a lot of people who have kind of come across my channel over the last few days and weeks who are picking up Gloomhaven for the first time. And there's some people struggling to get through the first couple of scenarios. It is well known that Gloomhaven does have a really hard learning curve. It doesn't do the best job of holding your hand, actually getting into the game and playing it and kind of getting early game success that you might kind of expect if you play kind of regular role-playing games or strategy games. You usually expect to beat the first couple of scenarios pretty easily, and then the difficulty ramps up from there. While Gloomhaven is kind of the opposite of that, really. It has a reverse difficulty curve. It is at its hardest point, in my opinion, when you have no information. A lot of the game is about learning those tricks, about learning those little things that help you to have success and kind of getting used to playing the characters. And then you can start to springboard from there once you get some gold to get some better items, get some XP to get a few better cards and stuff like that. And that's really where you kind of snowball from. So I want to do like a kind of quick and dirty guide, if you like, just going over a few small things I know a lot of people have been struggling with and I've been asked about a lot. So first off, when you first boot up the game, you've got either Guildmaster or you've got Campaign here. Now, Campaign is the tabletop version of the game. So if you're coming from a tabletop, then you know exactly what this entails. This is the exact same as the physical board game version that you might be used to. Now, Guildmaster is the mode that was exclusively made for digital, and it was made originally really just so that the devs can kind of test lots of different classes, lots of abilities, lots of items together, but they actually rounded it off into a very good mode that doesn't have retirement or anything like that. So it really allows you to kind of mess around a lot more with the characters without the worry of, oh, I've got a character to level 9, but then I've retired them, so now I have to start again. There's none of that kind of stuff. If you are somebody who just wants to play around with all of the different characters and try them out, then really Guildmaster is probably the one you want to go for. You do still have to unlock the characters, though. It's not as easy as just you're in and then there are all the characters. You still have to go through an unlocking process, just like you have to do in Campaign, but instead of it being personal quests and retirement, it's things like generate elements and stuff like that. So it's stuff that maybe you have a little bit more control over, or that you can kind of methodically plan out doing, at least for the early scenarios. You can't get them all, but you can get a good majority of the different characters unlocked and make a good start right from sort of scenario 1 in Guildmaster. Also in Guildmaster, it is the easier game mode, in my opinion. The devs did purposefully tune down the first couple of scenarios compared to the other ones that you will come across. So if you do want a kind of an easier start to the game, then Guildmaster is also the one to go for, because the first couple of scenarios, they just put a few less monsters in the different rooms. They make the rooms a little bit sort of smaller. They make the scenario lengths a little bit smaller, just so that you have that kind of breathing room to make a few mistakes and yet still probably succeed. However, that's not necessarily the case in the campaign, although the first scenario is easier by some standards. If you ask people who have played the game for a very long time, I think as a newbie, there are some very difficult things about it. So let's go into the campaign. I'm going to do this video from the basis of the campaign, but as a bit of advice, you might want to try Guildmaster if you have been struggling to at least get some kind of, get a bit comfortable with the controls and the UI and the game systems. So we go to the campaign. If you're going to make a new campaign, honestly, you probably want to be starting on normal. Normal is where I would encourage everybody to start with. Of course, if you do feel like you are losing a lot, then go down to easy. There is absolutely no shame in that. And easy is also one of the modes of play in the physical board game. So it's not like it's some sort of extra kind of level of difficulty here that they put in specifically. No, easy was also an option. And the thing is that you actually get less gold. So it's kind of like you want to be pushing the difficulty mode in Gloomhaven, not just for the challenge, but also because you get better rewards for doing so. So it's always one of those things where, yes, you're playing it on easy, but you're going to get less rewards because you're playing it on easy. So don't necessarily feel like that's a really bad thing. We also have friendly, which was a new mode which was added for digital because players were struggling to kind of get going in it. And again, I don't feel like people should feel ashamed in using the friendly mode if you want to for the very first kind of playthrough of your campaign, because really all it is you're going to get less rewards. It's going to be easier for you, and then you're going to get through the first couple of scenarios, get a few XP, and then you'll probably find that you can start to change this. You can change it at any time, so I really wouldn't worry about it too much. And even though some of us really like to play on really high levels of difficulty, absolutely, you know, I was down here on normal when I started the game and easy, so like don't worry about that. Like, it will come with time. Ability enhancements down here. Everything that the game kind of suggests as a setting, I would keep. So you've got ability enhancements as updated. Keep those as updated. Enter your guild name if you'd like. So I'll just put in something here. New guild, whatever. New save. In terms of house rules that you have here in the game, again, leave them all as standard. The only one that I might consider putting on, well, actually, there's two that I might consider putting on, depending on how you personally feel about the game, is the variant here, which is +2 and -2. So what this does is it takes the crits out of the game and it takes the misses out of the game. Now, I really like having those in the game because it is a core mechanic of the game, in my opinion. However, if you are someone who gets frustrated because let's say an enemy has 1 health and you're attacking for 3 and you draw your miss, well, that enemy stays alive and maybe hits you and maybe dies. So it could cost you a scenario at some point. However, if that miss was actually a -2 instead of a miss, you still would have killed that enemy and you would have sort of won and had victory, if you like. So this is going to come down to personal preference. Personally, I think you should stay with original because also there's things like curses and there are blesses in the game as mechanics. You know, ×2s and ×0s misses are mechanics that items refer to and abilities refer to. So I personally like to keep it as original. The only other one then is spawned monster gold drops. Now, if you just want to kind of accelerate your kind of your character growth a little bit, not loads, just a little bit, then I would put on this variant as well. This is the accepted variant for the Jaws of the Lion, I believe it was. So just yeah, this to me is just one to put on if you want to get a little bit of extra gold. Gold makes the game easier. Okay, so getting gold to allow you to buy items will allow you to enhance cards at later points in the game, and that will make the game easier for you. So more gold equals easier game in the long run. So it's up to you whether or not you want to use this. Personally, I don't, because I like to play by the original rules, but still, I think it's an absolutely fine option to put on if you like. So we'll go to the we'll go now into the game, and we'll talk a little bit about the different characters, about party compositions, things like that you might find useful on who to choose, who not to choose, what pitfalls and things to not fall into. We'll skip the cinematic, although it's really nice. We'll turn off tutorials here, although that doesn't seem to work. I think it's been bugged for quite a long time. So if we're talking about party compositions then, so you're going to have either 2, 3, or 4. You might be playing solo, you might be playing multiplayer. Now, party composition is something that matters a lot more when you're playing at 2-player, or if you're playing solo with 2 characters, or 3-player, it still creeps in, it's still part of the equation. However, at 4-player, especially with the starters, you could pretty much play any of the 4, and you're probably being okay. You'll probably do okay, especially on normal difficulty. There shouldn't be too many issues there. So let's just talk about the different characters to begin with. So you've got the Brute, the Tinkerer, you've got the Scoundrel, you've got the Cragheart, you've got the Spellweaver, and you've got the Mind Thief. I'm going to assume that you don't have the Jaws of the Lion DLC here, but yeah, that'll be for another time. So the Brute is kind of like your frontliner, if you like, your slightly tanky character. He's not one of the strongest tanks in the game as the game progresses. However, does have some early game tanking ability, has a relatively good hand size, has a decent amount of health, and yeah, has a couple of good sort of suites of abilities as well. So one of the easiest characters to play, in my opinion, is the Brute. So if you were looking for a very easy start where you're just going to run around, hit things, and you don't have to worry as much about being hit yourself, you're always going to have to worry about it a little bit, but you know, you'll be able to phase a couple more attacks maybe, then the Brute is kind of your guy that you want to go for. Tinkerer is the kind of out and out sort of support damage sort of hybrid at level 1, if you like. So has a lot of healing abilities, has some really good damage abilities. Tinkerer is very, very powerful at level 1 in my opinion. Might actually even be one of the strongest level 1 characters. I think Mind Thief probably gives you Mind Thief probably takes the cake there, but Tinkerer is very, very strong, mainly because of these 15 ability cards that they have. 15 cards is an insane amount. No other character in the game gets that much. And what that means is that you can burn cards very freely without having to worry about stamina, and also burn cards to damage, stuff like that. It's a very simple character to play. You have good attacks, you have good heals. I feel like this character is again one of the easiest characters to play in the game. So if you are looking for a ranged support damagey type character, the Tinkerer is going to be your go-to for that for sure, and it's a very, very forgiving character because of the number of cards. Scoundrel is your rogue character, your thief character if you like, who wants to be up and close a lot of the time to enemies, but does have some ranged abilities as well. But the main problem that the Scoundrel has is low health and a low amount of cards. Only 12 cards to sort of choose from, so very, very small. I think the hand size is 8 on this character. I can't remember if it's 8 or 9. So very, very small hand size on this character. Very much a glass cannon. You know, the Tinkerer has 15 ability cards to choose from, but has 12 in their hand. So, you know, this is a lot smaller. What this means is that burning cards on the Scoundrel really needs to be impactful, because if you burn a card and you miss on an attack, or you don't kill an enemy, or it's not really progressing, or you burn it way too early, like in the first room, then you're going to end up exhausting this character in the second or third room quite handily. Certainly somebody who takes an attack at the wrong time is going to be in trouble. It's a more difficult character to play because it's much more nuanced in what it can do. You can't just play 2 cards together and hope. You know, I feel like a few other characters can kind of get away with that a little bit more. Scoundrel, definitely not. So this is one of the more complex ones, but I know that this is a character that's going to be very, very popular for people to play right as soon as they start Gloomhaven up, because, wow, it's a rogue character, it's a thief character. A lot of people like to play those types of characters. So just bear in mind, though, this is a harder character to play, and it is one of the ones that can kind of just get blown up out of nowhere and you just lose, and you're like, I don't really understand why I lost. Well, the Scoundrel, it will be because of your positioning, it will be because you burnt too many cards, there'll be some other issue there. So one to think about there. I would avoid this character if you are trying to have an easy start actually in Gloomhaven. Next you have Cragheart. Cragheart is it's a very hybrid character, can do a bit of everything. It is my personal favorite character. I love it because it does a bit of everything. I like that pretty much all of my cards are going to be useful at a certain point during the game, and it's a very reliable character, tanky character, quite forgiving. However, it is a little bit more difficult to play. A lot of people who have played the Cragheart for the first time have said to me, how do you have success with this character? I just feel like I'm not doing a lot of the time, and it can feel like that sometimes. So Cragheart is a really I mean, it's a fantastic character once you get going, and some of the cards that they get at higher levels are just amazing. They're so much fun to play with, but it is a character that is a little bit more nuanced again. And you could end up finding that, for example, enemies moving away from you, or just stuff kind of out of your control might end up the game slipping through your fingers, sort of thing, with the Cragheart. So again, if you're wanting to play this character, make sure you kind of know what you're getting into, really, and have an understanding of that it is going to be a little bit more difficult than saying like the Brute. I would say if you're playing the Brute and you find the Brute to be a little bit too easy, then the Cragheart might be like a one that you could kind of transition into, maybe. But yeah, definitely not one maybe if you're really looking for an easy start. The Spellweaver is another very tricky character. It's funny because there are a lot of tricky characters at the start here. Spellweaver is your mage, your wizard character. She just does a bunch of damage, and that's really what she does. She does have a couple of support abilities, but let's be honest here. It's all about the damage with the Spellweaver, and you're probably playing the Spellweaver that way as well. That's probably why you pick the character, is you want to throw fireballs around, right? So the Spellweaver is another one that is very, very tricky because of her small hand size. You have to be very, very careful. Unlike the Scoundrel, she has a card called Reviving Ether, which allows her to recover all of her cards, which is here. If you want to check out any of my guides about these characters, please do in the links below in my channel down below. I have a guide on every single one of these characters, and specifically I do now have a quick start guide on the Spellweaver, which talks much more in detail about this. But Reviving Ether basically allows you to kind of reset, if you like, almost like you're back to the start of the scenario, and allows you to play lots of impactful burn cards without the worry necessarily that you're going to run out of stamina. Now, the problem with that is that if you time it incorrectly, you will fail, and you could just die out of nowhere. It's happened to me countless times where I've thought, okay, great, I'm going to reviving Aoife next turn, and then the enemy goes on a really early initiative, hits me, I have to burn a card in my hand, and the card is Revive Aoife that I have to burn, or something from my discard, right? So there are definite ways here where you can fail on the Spellweaver, and it is a glass cannon, absolutely. So bear that in mind, but it is a very strong damage dealing character, especially if you're playing on normal difficulty compared to some of the others at level 1. Next, we have the Mire Thief. Now, the Mire Thief, in my opinion, is the strongest starting character available, and continues to be a very, very strong character as they level up, mainly because they have a huge suite of control abilities. They have the most control abilities out of any of the starting set of characters. When we talk about control abilities, we're talking about abilities that stop the enemy, or hopefully stop or hinder the enemy from being able to take their turn. So those range from things like Disarm, which stops the enemy from attacking, Stun, which stops the enemy from taking a turn entirely and is the best form of control, which is what the Mire Thief has. I'll show you here with, you've got Perverse Edge, if I can find it, there you go, you've got Perverse Edge here, and then you've also got comboed with Frigid Apparition, you've got another stun here, you've also got a big disarm on Empathetic Assault. So this character is very, very strong. Also, the damage output for this character is crazy good because of the Mind's Weakness, which gives +2 attack to all of your melee attacks while you have this augment in play. Very, very strong. But essentially, control abilities are a backbone thing for Gloomhaven, because in Gloomhaven, unlike maybe some other games, it's unlikely that you can sit there and take damage every single round over and over and over and over again. Damage outstrips healing in this game very, very fast. Very, very, very fast, which is why healing abilities, in my opinion, are a bit underwhelming in general. You can, of course, healing is a necessary part of the game. You're going to need to use it to remove negative status effects like poisoned and wound when you get into those, because they can be very detrimental to players. And of course, you're going to want to try and get yourself back up towards full health. But healing cannot outstrip damage in this game, even at low levels of difficulty, unless maybe you've got like persistent shields or something. It's very, very hard for you to outstrip. So bear that in mind. It's always going to be better to be killing enemies than it is going to be taking the damage and healing. It's always going to be better to be controlling the enemies than it is to be taking damage and healing, because you're basically using a action which you could have used for an attack to heal, which is bad, because in Gloomhaven everything is on a clock. You're always a race against the clock where you might run out of stamina. You need to clear the scenario before you run out of stamina. Okay, so that is really, really important. So let's talk about like party compositions very quickly here. I don't want to make this video go on forever, but essentially, so if you're playing 2-player and you're just wanting a nice easy start in the game, honestly, something like the Brute Tinkerer would be a fantastic starting pair for you. You're going to have a bit of everything. The Tinkerer's got a bit of control, so it's got some stun, it's got a little bit of immobilize, got plenty of heals to keep the Brute kind of topped up, if you like. Brute's got Provoking Roar, really, really good control ability, got some decent sort of sized attacks. I feel like this party, the only thing with this party is it might be lacking a little bit on the damage front, which is worth considering. So you might want to make sure that you address that, and make sure that your Tinkerer doesn't go too hard on the healing side of things. Make sure they're still contributing damage to the table, because that could get you in trouble. But I feel like these two together, very, very solid pairing. If you were going, if you wanted to go for something a little bit more aggressive in that sense, then I feel like you could play something like a Cragheart instead of the Brute. I feel like at 2-player, you're always going to want a tanky-ish frontliner, somebody who has got a decent amount of health, especially if you're just starting out. So both the Brute and the Cragheart can kind of wear armor, and they can go forward with less worry than the other 4 characters. So I would consider picking one of those two as your kind of rock, no pun intended, but as your rock to your pie, and then choose something like alongside that to complement that character. So something like a ranged support character is a really good way of doing that, because then you've got melee and ranged, and you're not sort of going too hard just on melee or too hard on ranged. If you're going up to 3 players, then obviously when you get to 3 players, things open up massively. If you want a really simple party, again, these two, then potentially bring in the Scoundrel. Just being careful that with the Scoundrel, you're making sure that you are not hurting yourself by burning cards too quickly. So again, just a difficult character to play, because I feel like a lot of people just want to burn cards to do damage, especially when you first start playing the game. not the best thing to do. So, but I think like as a starting party comp, these three together would also be pretty good. The Scoundrel wants to play with another melee character because all of their abilities are to do with flanking, or that's like the mechanic that I call it. But essentially, an ally being adjacent to the enemy, it's like a group up type mechanic or a flanking mechanic. So this needs another melee character really in the game. Does not pair very well with just ranged characters, so you're going to want another melee character there. You could swap out the Scoundrel here for a Spellweaver, that would be fine. You could swap out the Scoundrel for a Mind Thief also, that would be fine. You could swap out the Scoundrel for the Cragheart, that would also be fine. So once you get to 3-player, really the only thing to avoid at 3-player or 3 mercenaries is to ensure that you don't run a complete glass cannon setup where you have like Scoundrel, Spellweaver, Mind Thief, because you'd have to be very precise at playing the game. It is possible, you just have to be incredibly precise, and if you're brand new to the game, it's unlikely you're going to be precise enough to make that really work. So just don't set yourself up to make the game harder than it needs to be, basically. So that's what my sort of suggestion would. At 4-player, do whatever you like. At 4-player, really, there's no combination of characters here that is bad, except for possibly Tinkerer, Scoundrel, Spellweaver, and Mind Thief. Then you have got sort of 4 characters that are a little bit at odds with each other sometimes, because you haven't really got somebody who could just be like, I'll be the one to open the door, I'll open the door and I'll take a couple of hits if I need to, which these 2 guys are really good at when you're just starting out. So that's the main thing, is you don't have a great door opener unless you have gotten very experienced with the Mind Thief and invisibility and things like that. Like, it's very difficult for me to say like don't play this, because there is absolutely a way to play every combination of characters in Gloomhaven, but I'm just trying to avoid some of the pitfalls that might cause you to have a rough time, because the Mind Thief is very good at opening doors, really good at opening doors. However, that requires you to know how to go about doing that, and I don't think that that's maybe something you should focus on learning at the very beginning. I don't want to get you in a mindset of, okay, I do this every single time, when there are multiple ways to open doors, multiple ways to approach doors in the game. So but yeah, so that's the only one that I would maybe sort of avoid. Let's talk a little bit about cards. So we'll just make a character. We'll just make up a brute here. We'll just put an A for now. Personal quests. Now, personal quests, we'll talk very quickly about this. Personal quests are something that when your character achieves it, they will then retire, and then they will unlock a character for you to then play afterwards. So this character kind of goes away, they retire, they're no longer playable, and then you unlock a new class, and then you can choose from either, the new class or any previously unlocked class that was available. So you can go back and you could even play another brute if you wanted to. So you've got kill 15 vermin, scouts, or shamans, experience your party members becoming exhausted 15 times. Neither of these 2 I think are particularly great. This one is quite a hard one to do. Personally, I would go for this. If you're looking for easy personal quests to do, look for ones that are not specific kills. So this thing says like kill 15 vermin, scouts, or shamans. Anyone that says kill some X of X, I would generally avoid if it names a particular enemy. So a vermling scout, I think there's one that says forest imps. Anything that names a specific enemy type, I would avoid, generally speaking, just because you don't know when you're going to be able to actually fight those guys. And if you do, you don't know if you're going to be the one to land the killing blow on those guys. So it can be a harder one to unlock. Definitely try and pick up some of the ones that you have a lot more control over. So for example, this one, you have a lot of control over this, because you could just purposefully exhaust some of your party members. If you're playing solo or if you're playing multiplayer, it's going to happen, right? It's naturally, some people are going to exhaust during the scenario. So this will happen naturally over time as you play. You can force it if you want, but you don't have to force it. This one, you will have to force it. So just bear that in mind. The only one that I think, there's a couple that are kind of fine early on. The crypt one, Seeker of Zord, is a great early one to go do, because you have lots of crypts to do. I think it's Abhorrent Slayer, which is the one to kill demon types. That one's actually pretty good as well, because you actually face a hell of a lot of demons as you progress the main story. So that one is maybe the exception to this. But most of the other ones, try and pick ones where you think, okay, yeah, I personally have control over that because it's to do with my party or what I'm doing and stuff like that. So yeah, so we'll quickly choose that. But that's a brief note on personal quests for like decent kind of progression. So let's talk about cards. So no two ability cards in Gloomhaven are made equally, unfortunately. So although a lot of the cards may look interesting and think, oh yeah, that looks like that would be maybe a good idea, or that could work really well, it's not every card is made equally, and certainly there are a few pitfalls you can fall into here when doing your card selection. So of course, again, if you want to look at any of my guides, I have guides for each of the characters in terms of what I play with and what cards I recommend for the different characters, so you can check those out at the links down below. But in terms of what you've got sort of here and cards and things, there are a few things that I would avoid using. Okay, so breaking down an ability is the best way to look at this. So the top of a card is, generally speaking, your most premium slot on a card. Okay, top actions are premium in the game. Why are they premium? Well, because they attack most of the time and they kill enemies, and that's how you win scenarios. Bottoms of cards are usually moves or support abilities. Sometimes they are attacks, and that is definitely something to look out for. If you see attacks on the bottom of a card, then that usually means that card's a little bit more powerful, maybe, unless it's a burn. You'd have to sort of judge that as it comes. But generally, if that ever gets upset, that balance, then there's an opportunity there maybe for some shenanigans. But the top action is premium, and it needs to be better than your attack base 2, okay? Every card has an attack base 2 as a top action, on a move base 2 on the bottom, right? So breaking down a card top action, got to be a good attack. Hopefully something, that's better than, it should be better than this. It pretty much always will be. The way the game's designed, it will be. Then you have your initiative as well. So initiative, excuse me. Oh, a bit of phlegm there. Sorry about that. Okay, so initiative, you got your initiative in the card here. Very, very important. We'll get into a little bit of initiative stuff in a minute, but initiative super important in this game, and we'll go over that a little bit. And then obviously your bottom action here, which is generally your move. So looking at a card, you're going to sort of determine a few different things. Like, is the top action good? Is the bottom action good? Am I going to be using it for more for the top action than I am the bottom? Or am I going to be using it more for the bottom than I am for the top? Am I going to be using it for the initiative? Is it a key initiative card for me? Will it allow me to go before the enemies or make sure that I go after the enemies? Very key thing in Gloomhaven is getting into your mind very early on that initiative wins you scenarios, okay? Initiative is what will win you scenarios. Either going early to aggressively go after an enemy and kill them or control them before they get to act, or by going late, allowing those enemies to come towards you so that then you can then go safely towards them and meet them halfway and then go and attack them. So there's a lot that goes into initiative in Gloomhaven. So you really need to keep that in your mind. The worst initiatives in the game are initiatives that are anywhere generally between, I would say, around about 35 to about 70. Those kinds of ranges of initiative are, generally speaking, never going to be used as your leading initiative, or it's rare that they will be used as your leading initiative. Why? Because it means that you have very, very little control over what happens during the round. If I go on initiative 50, I'm literally just putting my finger up in the air and just saying, well, I have no clue here, because every enemy in the game will be able to go before that potentially with the right ability cards that they flip, and most enemies will be able to go after it as well with any ability card. So you're really just saying, I don't know what's going to happen, and you're kind of opening yourself up to the RNG of the game very heavily, and then enemies will obviously get an opportunity to attack you, move, do something strange where you're like, oh well, now I can't even perform my ability because you've run away, or you've gone to a part where I can't go, or I can't reach you anymore, or for whatever reason, right? So initiative is so important in this game, and it really needs to get into your mind, like, okay, am I using this card mainly for its initiative and its top action or its bottom action, or is this just a card that I'm using maybe as a one-time thing or whatever? So we'll briefly go over something like this. So trample, really good top attack with the PS2, which negates shields, really good. Bottom of trample is a really good move ability. So comboed with Warhammer can stun a bunch of enemies with this as well. So get yourself Boots of Striding and get yourself a Warhammer and combine those two things together to move 6. Attack everything for 2 that goes through, and because it's a melee attack, you can add the Warhammer on top to then stun everything. So yeah, but Basically, trample, you can see here, very good. Cards to avoid here. So cards that don't really do a huge amount. So Eye for an Eye is an interesting one because I see a lot of people run Eye for an Eye, and I don't think it's a terrible card, but it's one that I usually personally don't run. Now, Retaliate is an ability that sounds very interesting, but retaliating needs you to take damage in order to do damage back. So whenever you take damage, you're going to deal damage back, which can be quite nice in certain situations, especially with shield. Or if you don't have shield, it's usually it can sometimes be a kind of very marginal or bad trade-off in which you end up taking damage from the enemy, and you reflect to do back. So if the enemy attacks me for 3, I take 3 damage, and I do 2 damage back to the enemy. That's a bad trade, unless, of course, you know, I'm killing the enemy maybe for that too. But it's generally speaking, I'm 1 damage worse off on that trade. Would I not have been better at just attacking that enemy, maybe, for 2? Rather than relying on that retaliate, right? Those are the little things you got to ask yourself. Like, actually, should I have not just gone early and used the default attack 2 and just attacked it for 2 with this card, right? So there's the little things that you can kind of ask yourself. And retaliate, I think, is a more complex mechanic that I think does require more nuance and more understanding of the game. So I would stay away from retaliate early on, at least as playing it as like your main action. Of course, if you have like a little bit of extra value, then do it. But I wouldn't take your entire turn just to play retaliate. This is actually a fairly decent heal to just keep yourself going and removing poison and wounds. So it's not too bad. But Eye for an Eye is a good example of a card that will probably make the cut a lot of the time because of its initiative as well. Because 18 initiative is pretty good. But cards to look out for here. So if we go through some of these. So if we look at so Shield Bash, for example. Shield Bash, it's a burn, a top ability. So you know, it's going to have to do something quite good. It's not a particularly great attack. Attack 4 is not a huge value. Stun's really good effect, but not a huge value. So be careful about these sorts of things. Low value attacks on burns. You know, when you consider that you probably have, if we have a look, I'm sure we do. Well, we have Trample, right? Which is attack 3, non-burn, Pierce 2. So we can keep playing. Obviously, burning something like this early on is not going to be great. It's going to have some use later on in the scenario, but maybe not worth. So try and avoid things like this a little bit. So personally, like Shield Bash, for example, would be a card that I would probably avoid. Also because the bottom, although it has shield, which is nice, and shield can be very useful, and the initiative of 15 is quite nice, it doesn't have any kind of movement on it. So this card can often just end up being like, this doesn't do anything at all, right? I prefer to play a little bit more aggressive, and this doesn't really do too much at all. So I would maybe stay away from cards that don't do good attacks, good moves, non-burns, right? Another card here that is a great example of one that you might think it looks really good, but it actually could end up not being very good at all. Wall of Doom top, Retaliate 2, Shield 2. Of course, that sounds great. It means that a lot of enemies are going to be taking damage back, but realistically, it's a bit of a trap because it doesn't. It will most likely underperform compared to a big burn or something. And then honestly, I'd rather play Shield Bash than I would top of Wall of Doom, just to stun an enemy so it doesn't attack at all. You know, it would make much more sense. So this is another card to sort of be aware of. The Brute may have not been the best example of a character to go through, because to be honest, the Brute actually, out of the starting characters, apart from Wall of Doom, all of the other cards, I think you can make a fairly decent argument as to why you may want to keep them. But one thing to consider is always try and have nice early initiatives and have in your mind, okay, I'm going to be playing this for the initiative, like, you know, 18 or 10, like that's I want to go early, and those are the kind of cards that allow me to go early. And also keep in your mind a couple of cards to go late. So 87 is a great example of this. Just 87 initiative, move 4. You play that and then let the enemies come towards you. Then you can move right up into their face and start attacking them straight away. So again, really good way of having that initiative control. Early initiative and some late initiative. One character I think I wanted to demonstrate the kind of danger of this with is the Scoundrel. So this is a good example of one not to pick. Kill 3 uses 3 lurkers and 3 spitting drakes. Although you will come across some of these, not early on. This, though, you can do every single time you return to town, as long as you've got the gold. So very easy to do. So Scoundrel here, if we look at this, you've got a couple of cards here which are maybe a little bit risky. So Backstab is a fantastic attack to try and kill a really troublesome elite or a high health enemy, or even a boss when you get towards boss scenarios, definitely going to be trying to use backstab on them. But the tendency with a lot of players is to use backstab very early on because it's, oh my god, I'm going to do so much damage. Backstab is your final room or your kind of very late, deep into the scenario type card where you will use it like, okay, I need to use it now. Do not be using backstab in the first room. Same thing with smoke bomb. A lot of people like using the smoke bomb combo, smoke bomb into that. Both of these cards are excellent because of their bottom abilities, and their initiatives, but do not fall into the trap of burning these cards early. That is a way for you to immediately kind of have trouble, if you like, and immediately put yourself onto the back foot because your stamina will not last if you do that. A couple of cards here that I think, do we have the double burn? I don't think we have. So I'm not sure if there is. There must be a double burn probably on the Tinkerer actually, but double burn cards are ones that I would always avoid. So this is where the top ability is a burn and the bottom ability is also a burn. What that means is that you're going to have to either burn it in your first rotation because that's what it's there for. And sometimes there are a couple of cards where that might be okay, but generally speaking, not great. Probably don't want to be burning a card in your first rotation or your first full playthrough of all of your cards. You don't want to be doing that. So I would try and avoid the double burns because of that, because that means if not, you're going to have to play them as default abilities. Now, move 2 is a fine default ability to do. I will often do low initiative card, like a 9 here, and a default move 2. I will do that all day, and that is absolutely fine. If that's what is required of me to go before an enemy, to get to an enemy and potentially kill it, or control it, I will do that, right? That's absolutely fine. However, default attack 2 tops are very, very mediocre, and you should only really be using those in a pinch when you really need to. When, okay, the 2 cards that I have, neither of them are an attack, but this guy's on 1 health. Let's go over there and hit him, right? Like, don't be doing this regularly. But default move 2s, regular use of that is absolutely fine and pretty normal for a lot of players to use. So yeah, so the final tip on kind of card selection there is avoid double burns and make sure that you know, am I playing this card for its top most of the time? Am I playing this card for the bottom most of the time? And if I burn this card, is it really going to upset me for future turns because I'm now increasing the clock? Every single burn must actually be reducing the clock of the scenario. So killing enemies quicker, progressing the scenario quicker is fine in principle, but something like backstab, for example, just kind of kills. It might kill an enemy, but you could have killed that enemy next turn anyway, right? You could have used flanking strike and attacked for 5, but instead you decided to use backstab and attack for 7, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe the 7 damage did kill it and flanking strike wouldn't have killed it. But could you have maybe taken that 1 hit of a couple of damage and then killed it next round with just another attack card? And if you've done that, you've saved yourself a burn. You've still got backstab, which is a great initiative, and it's a move 6 for you to use for the rest of the scenario. And then you finally use backstab when you know you need that attack 7. Not because it feels like, okay, I could use it here, like, and it would kill the enemy. You use it when you need to use it, not just because it's, hey, there's an enemy over there. Let's go and do the most damage possible, right? That's a mindset that you might need to sort of try and avoid, right? You've got to be looking for really good value proposition trade-offs for using your burns, okay? So that's enough, I guess, about sort of party comps and things like that. So what I'll do now is I'll just boot up Black Barrow and we'll go in with just a Tinkerer and a Brute, because I think, like, you know, these are, like I said, these are the 2 characters that I think if you're playing just 2-player, then these are the easiest ones to go for. I'm not going to have time here to go through 3 and 4, but I think if I just go through 2, you'll probably get a really good understanding of what we're going to do. So for this one, it doesn't really matter. This is the one that I said I actually think is okay, because actually you do come across a lot of these guys fairly early on in the game. And if you just progress the campaign, you will definitely be against them. So, okay, so we'll choose these 2 guys. I'll go for like what I prefer as my kind of setup that I usually use for these characters. So we'll keep that. Actually, I think I probably want that over that for this particular scenario. That looks fairly good for me. It's a level 1. In terms of items, I will quickly buy a couple of items here just to help out. Now, in terms of early game items for the Brute, Iron Helm is like the best thing you can possibly buy. It is so good, especially if you're playing with the ×2. If you're worried about getting ×2s drawn against you, just use Iron Helm. And then the other item really is Warhammer. It's 30 gold, so I don't have enough if I buy the Iron Helm, but I should be able to get it next scenario. So then I'll just pick up a pair of boots instead. Boots of striding here. So I've just got a nice pair of boots to give myself +2, and I'm now immune to any ×2s that the enemies might draw, which is really, really important. For the Tinkerer, really, its Eagle Eye Goggles is such a strong item on this character because of the amount of attacks that they can do, multi-target attacks. So I'll just straight up spend that on that. And in terms of cards for this character, I think I'm pretty happy with the general setup. It's usually pretty good. Here's the double burn that I was talking about. We'll definitely be getting rid of that because it is not good value. Reviving Shock is a really good attack, actually. Potent Potables is not bad either. But everything else here seems pretty standard to me. Proximity Mine's maybe one that you might consider dropping, but everything else there seems pretty good. So let's go straight into Black Barrow with these guys. I'll skip all of the preamble. Road events, I won't talk about those too much, but just do what you think makes sense. Okay, well, we get 10 gold, but we have to discard 2 cards, so a little bit of an awkward start. Discarding cards at the start of a scenario, never good, but hopefully that will help me show how you can come back from things. Okay, so battle goals. Battle goals are something that are definitely optional, okay? You only get your battle goal if you win the scenario. If you are victorious in the scenario and you completed your battle goal, that's when you'll get the rewards, right, of these perk points. Perk points don't equal a complete perk either. You need 3 perk points to get a perk. So this is sort of like 1 in 3, if you like. So perks, in my opinion, when you're just starting out, almost ignore them, okay? Do not concentrate on trying to do these because they can lose you the scenario if you go after them too hard. So when I play on Deadly, I actually ignore them. So when I play on the highest levels of difficulty, I mostly ignore them because I know that I just need to play as optimally as possible and use my abilities as best as I can. And there's no point me trying to do suboptimal things to try and earn a perk point when I'm going to lose the scenario anyway. So honestly, my best piece of advice for this is actually ignore them, right? There might be a chance of me doing this because there are traps in this scenario, so I will pick Neutralizer for this. Kill 1 or more elite monsters during the scenario. Quite possible. Workhorse, gain 13 or more. Unlikely on the Brute to get that. I'll go for Hunter. So easy one to do there, and we'll just jump straight in. So we're going to have to get rid of those 2 cards as we jump into the scenario, which is obviously a little bit unfortunate. So I'll just drop out probably Hook Gun's not particularly great here. And to be honest, Proximity Mine, those are 2 cards that I probably won't play. Probably get rid of Eye for an Eye. And Overwhelming Assault is very good in the next room. So is Grab and Go, though, so... maybe Warding Strength.
Take care of these unfortunate...
Okay, so when you first get into your first scenario, I just want to check the difficulty. I think I did put it as normal, right? Are we on normal? Yeah, we're on normal. Okay, good. So when you first get into the scenario, there's a few things that you should always do, right? You've just started playing the game. Make sure you mouse over the enemies here and see what their stats are and what kind of things that they can do, okay? There is a link down below, which I'll provide to my tools spreadsheet, where I have listed every single ability card and the different levels of every single enemy in the game if you would like to review that. So basically, every enemy in Gloomhaven has 8 different abilities. 2 of those abilities will be shuffle abilities. I think it's always 2. Will be shuffle abilities. Which will shuffle their ability deck, and then they will be able to draw any of those 8 again. Most of the enemies have a range of initiative, some early, some late. Most of the enemies also have cards that don't necessarily do anything too horrible to the players. They'll have like one kind of card or two cards which kind of like almost like a miss a go, or you're very thankful when they draw it because it's generally less, they're not attacking the players or they're not doing something that's too hard on you. But the thing to know about this is that once you get good at the game, you can start to realize about these initiatives that they have, what their abilities are, and you can start to identify what the problematic ones are and how to avoid them and play around them. But you're not going to be able to do that the first time that you play, so I wouldn't worry about min-maxing that too much. But for bandits, the most important things here to look at really is going to be their health, their move, and their attack value. You see on the elite here, he has a movement of 2, he has an attack value of 3, and he has health of 9. He also has shield 1, which means that every bit of damage that we do to him, every attack is going to be reduced by 1 unless we use pierce against him. So bandit guards, the regulars, they have 3 movement, 2 attack, and they have 6 health. Okay, so there is some variation here where they can draw cards that increase their movement, decrease their movement, increase their attack, decrease their attack. Those things do happen in the game and are possible. However, when you're first starting out, this is an important thing to look at and think, okay, this guy can only move a maximum of, this guy can move maximum of 3, right? So right now, where I am, he can go 1, 2, 3, and he's adjacent to my brute, and he can attack my brute, right? If I go over here, 1, 2, 3, like with the Tinkerer, can't reach the Tinkerer over here. Same with the Brute. If I go over here, 1, 2, 3, can't get me, right? This guy, 1, 2, 3, can still get me, which is a bit unfortunate. This guy only moves 2 because he's a bit more weighted down with armor. So it's going to go 1, 2, so can't get me. So in this situation here, we know that only one enemy could possibly get towards me, right? Only one enemy could possibly actually get towards me, which is this one here. If he was to draw the card that was like move and attack or something like that, which he may not draw. So what does this mean? Well, this means that this will be a really good opportunity on the first turn for us to go late on our initiative, because we don't have to worry about us aggressively attacking the enemies, moving towards them. We can wait to see what they do. Hopefully they don't come and attack us, and then we can go and attack them. Okay, so trample will be a really good attack on this bandit guard elite, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. But in terms of general attack priorities here, I think we want to try and kill the little guys first and then go for the big guy. Reason is, they're easier to kill. One figure off of the board is better than no figures off the board. I could spend 2 turns trying to kill the bandit guard elite, and these guys are going to hit me for 2 extra turns, right? Try and reduce the number of figures in the scenario as quickly as possible, then go for like the targets. Sometimes this might change depending on the value of this. So for example, cultists are a very high value enemy in which you want to kill them quickly because they can summon more enemies. So you kind of go after them as a bit of priority. Same with archers sometimes, like archers can sometimes be a priority because of what they are. But in a situation like this, we've got 3 enemies of the same type. I would go for the regular enemies first before I go for the elite, just because it's going to be much easier to deal with this. So what we'll do then is we'll look to probably control one of these guys up on the next turn, and then we will go late here. So what we'll do is we'll do a preemptive heal with the bottom of harmless contraption here. 74 is pretty late, and we'll do toxic bolt, which is a nice little attack here. So I'm kind of expecting that we're going to hopefully go after these guys here with this kind of initiative. It could end up being a bit rubbish where I have to use this as a move too, but we'll see how that goes. And then for our brute, similarly, I want to kind of just chill out a little bit here with the brute. I want to go fairly late. I think what we'll do is we'll use grab and go. Yeah, we'll use grab and go here, and I'll probably go for something like a provoking roar turn on them late. So that means that he's going to be disarmed for the following turn. So let's see what the enemy does. Okay, that was pretty much the worst draw that we could hope for on this one. So that's their ranged attack. This is one of the worst cards that they could draw out of their 8, because it's very hard for us to not to avoid it. I think we will still avoid it, but it can be very bad. So this is a good example of how things can go wrong. Luckily, it didn't really. We still ended up only taking 1 damage on 1 character, which is really good. Okay, so now we've got toxic bolt, so we've got our poison here. I'm actually going to... I'm going to attack this guy here, I think. And I'll actually use this as a default move, and I'll move slightly to the right here. I'm going to try and go round this side of the enemies. They've grouped up into a very nice position here, so our Tinkerer can probably use that to their advantage. So what I'll do here is I'll actually go to... I think we'll go here. And what we'll do is we'll disarm this guy so he doesn't get a turn next turn. And we'll focus on trying to kill this bandit guard. I have got sped up animations on at the moment, if you're wondering why everything's happening so quick, because of I like to play with sped up animations when I'm playing. So we've also got stun shot here, which is a range 3. 1, 2, 3. So I could stun the guy at the back. That's actually a really good play. And I could shield up my brute for the one guy who might end up taking an attack from. We've got spare dagger here, which is an attack on the bottom. So now we can look to maybe kill this bandit guard or attack him for 2. We've also got leaping cleave, which would be very good here against these two guys, right? So that seems like a good idea. And in fact, actually, spare dagger plus leaping cleave is a really nice turn. Hopefully, we can kill both of these guys. So 70, that's a really nice draw. We managed to go earlier than them because we played our nice early initiatives. Not guaranteed. They could have gone on 15. They do have a 15 initiative, so that wasn't necessarily guaranteed there. They have 2 15s, actually. So we'll stun this guy at the back. And we'll do our leaping cleave. We'll make sure that we use our top ability first, because we could turn this in just a default move too if we do end up killing them both. All right, well, we missed, unfortunately, on this guy. That was not a great attack. This is why you might want to play with that reduced randomness variant. So what we'll do is we'll finish this guy off, because, you know, this guy's stunned, so he's not doing anything. This guy's disarmed, so he's not doing anything. So we'll finish off this bandit guard. And because we already drew our miss, we can't draw our miss again, right? You can only... You shuffle your attack modifier deck at the end of each round. Unless you have no cards to draw, then you have to immediately shuffle it. So we knew we weren't going to be able to draw our miss twice in a row there, which is nice. Okay, so one down, 2 to go. So this guy hasn't really managed to do much. You can see at the moment how I've done a good job of just controlling these enemies up. I've just, you know, I've taken 1 attack and they drew a -2, which was a little bit lucky. But, you know, so far, they have not done anything against us here. You know, we have really managed to kind of take them on. Right. So next, we probably want to do something like Enhancement Field bottom here is really good with Reviving Shock. We have the range, so this could allow us to do damage against 2 things. Now, it is looking like we're going to take some damage here, unfortunately, because of where the enemy is. It would have been good to try and make the wind, the air, to try and do skewer. We would have had to have used Leaping Cleave for the bottom for that, though, which we didn't do. So Balance Measure is one of these kind of cards where I like to use it for the top if I can. And I like to use it with Grab and Go for an attack 4 minimum. And then maybe with the boots an attack 6. I think we want to try and kill this guy. But also I'm kind of conscious that we might want to go after that there. Let's go on. This is a bit of a late risky initiative, but I think we can take a little bit of a hit if we need to on the brute. Okay, good. So we're going to get an additional +1 attack as well on this little AoE, which is really, really nice. This is a good opportunity to use the goggles because we're attacking 2 things, and I think we're probably going to rest before we go into the next room anyway, so... Oh, did it not use them? I must have not clicked them. Well, we got lucky anyway. I must have not clicked them properly, but there you go. Always make sure to confirm your choices properly. Okay. So now we got a nice trample here. Thank you for the follow, even though I'm offline. I appreciate it. There's some birds. So we'll use the trample top here. And then we can move. We'll just get the loot here. We don't need to do anything. Now, looting in the game is also a very core concept. If you looked at my very first video I ever did, which was like beginner's tips to Gloomhaven, I think I did things in this order. I said earn XP, then get gold, then do your battle goal. Now, that's not technically true. Loot does take priority over XP because loot is the fastest way for you to improve your character because it buys you items. It can get you enhancements, which are very, very strong. So loot can do wonders, especially early on. So try to loot. However, don't be burning loot 2s like in the first room just because you can. Don't do that. Try and use those big loot actions towards the end of a scenario when you know it's in the bag. Let's try and maximize on loot. Again, loot's one of those things. Make sure you finish the scenario first. Make sure you're going to win the scenario, then maybe try and get some loot, then get some XP. I do feel like XP, depending on what your progression goals are, might be more important, because if you're thinking, well, actually, I just really want to get this character to level 9 as fast as I can, then you might want to just prioritize XP. So we'll get that gold, because you always loot whatever you kind of end your turn on. So now we got a good opportunity to maybe do a little bit of a heal if we wanted to. We don't have much going on here though, so I feel like what we'll do is we'll probably do these two together. We know that we're going to be going on some kind of rest in a minute. This guy being strengthened is a little bit scary here because of course that will mean that he has advantage, so he could draw something good. I definitely want him to attack my brute here. I'm going to line up a nice 2 heal on my brute. Actually, I want to do it late though. I'm going to line up a nice heal on my brute if he takes a bit of damage here. Looks like he's going to. So we'll use skewer, which... Oh, there you go. We got lucky. We drew the +1. And we'll make sure we grab that loot. We have hoovered up that loot over the Tinkerer. So that was nice. We got a good so in terms of like now we've cleared the room, what should we be doing? Well, we should be stacking up at the door. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to stack up at the door. Get everybody close together. If you've got extra turns, just take the extra turn. I don't have an extra turn here. So actually in this instance, I won't take the extra turn. So this is a good example of where the Tinkerer, you can already see it, right? We haven't burned any cards on either of our two characters yet. And you can see that we've already got 1 extra turn over the brute, right? The brute's already needing to rest. We've got 1 more turn. And that stuff compounds. It really does. So imagine if the brute had burned 2 cards and the Tinkerer hadn't burned any. You know, that means on the next time, the Tinkerer is going to be even further ahead, right? In terms of stamina. It's a really key thing to get into your mind on how to play. Avoiding burning cards unless you think, well, actually, this is a really great opportunity to do so. So we'll leave that for now. And actually what I'll do here is I'll actually long rest on both characters. The reason being that I would like to sync them both up so they both have full hands ready to go for the next room. If you're playing solo, this is a really good thing to do. If you're playing multiplayer, it's also just a good thing to say to your buddies like, hey, I'm going to be long resting. Oh, can we all sync up our long rests here? Or does somebody have like a bunch of turns? Like somebody else, you know, as the scenario progresses, somebody else will probably say, well, actually, I've got like 2 more turns before I need to rest. So it does maybe make sense for them to do those 2 turns. But when you're playing solo and you're in a situation like this, let's just sync up our long rest, especially on a scenario like this, which is a little bit easier than some of the future scenarios. We don't have to min-max quite as much. And this will allow us to just comfortably go into the next room with all of our stuff. So in terms of cards we're going to get rid of, Overwhelming Assault's a really good ability in the next room because there are traps. So we'll be keeping that. And there's also traps, I think, in the last room as well. So we'll keep that. Eye for an Eye is a card I'm not a huge fan of, but, you know, the 18 initiative is something that's worth maybe considering. I like Grab and Go. Warding Strength is also kind of okay. I think I will get rid of Eye for an Eye. A bit risky because it's a decent initiative, but hopefully we can get around that problem. The card to get rid of here is probably going to be Proximity Mine. It's not particularly great, so we'll get rid of that. Proximity Mine can be useful with Hook Gun, but in my experience, it's very cute trying to line it up. And if you want, at this stage in time, I would advise just trying to do the basics good. Rather than trying to do anything crazy, just do the basics good. 1, 2, 3. So this could be a good use of like Grab and Go, with balanced measure, because we're quite far away from the door here, so we could do a nice big move 4, attack for a bunch. But what I'll do is I'll actually show you. I'll show you a slightly different way of approaching this second room, because this second room can throw some people. So what I'll do is I'll actually try and pull the enemies towards the door. So I'll open the door and then I'll run away. Now this is one kind of door opening strategy that you can use. So to do that, I need to go before 87, but that's the only caveat I have here, and I want a decent movement. So let's have a move 4 there. Then, to be honest, I'm probably not going to do anything else with my cards. So I just want a throwaway card here. Reinvigorating Elixir is pretty throwaway at this point in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the door. As soon as we open the door, all of the enemies will reveal themselves and their ability cards will be drawn and they will filter themselves into the turn order. So now they will go before me because both of their initiatives were before 74. So after I finish my Tinkerer turn, these guys will get to act. So we'll have a look what they're doing. So move 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they can get to these hexes here. The archer at the back is just moving 1, 1, but has a range of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see here that there's like some dangerous positions, right? Now I could do the aggressive line and go straight in. But if I do, I'm going to be attacked for 1 damage here, 1 damage here, and I'm going to be attacked for 2 damage here, right? Not great. If I actually drop back here, which is what I'm going to do, then instead, the enemies are going to start coming towards me. I skip on them doing any attacks. And now we have a really good opportunity for the brute to do a pretty nice balanced measure on one of these guys. So we'll go like 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. I could use the boots, but I might use the boots to get towards the bandit archer at the back. And then we'll use this and we'll attack. Let's go 4, right? So now we avoided all of the damage from the enemies entirely there because of just our positioning in the room, right? We had the brute set far back. We had the Tinkerer who went to open the door and then run away. Really simple way of playing, right? Very simple way of playing. So now it's the next round. So what do? We go early. So then we get the back-to-back turn. So now what we want to do is we want to probably go for stun shot on the back guy here so that he doesn't get to act. And then we want the brute to kill him. But the brute could also go for the risky leaping cleave here. Let's go for a more risky play, shall we? I like the idea of going for something a little bit more risky. So we'll go for... yeah, we'll go for a Toxic Bolt on the Bandit Guard. And we'll make sure we go before our brute. And we'll see if we can finish these 2 guys off in a single turn. Okay, we'll use... I'll probably just use this as a move 2, but yeah, I'll use this as a move 2. Hook gun's going to have some application in the future. Okay, so they do their 15. This is a bad draw for us. It's pretty much the worst draw. Bam. Iron Helm. Worth every penny, right? That's just half the amount of damage we were about to take there. We would have taken 4 damage if it wasn't for the fact that we had Iron Helm there. Considering how, like, that can happen multiple times in a scenario, okay? Iron Helm saves lives. If you're worried about a randomness in the game, buy Iron Helm. So we ended up taking a bunch of damage there, which was not nice. We kind of... That's one of the worst draws we could possibly get from the Bandit Guard. So, you know, and that's going to happen occasionally. But at least we played a heal ability here to remove the poison off of our brute. So that's kind of nice. So we can start mending our brute next turn. It's not too bad. It could have been way worse. So we'll attack these 2 here. All right, well, we drew our own miss there. Not so good. But we got the attack leaving cleave, and we got this one here too. Archer is still kind of just chilling. We'll get to us soon. The other thing with archers is that you can use the line of sight tool to work out if they can hit you. So if you hold tab you will get an outline of everything in the scenario. So this will show you all the legal hexes, right? White hexes are all legal hexes that you could be in. These guys show traps. Obviously, these are trap hexes. There's a door. If you have obstacles, obstacles will show as well. All of that kind of good stuff. And you can also see, you know, what the enemies' names are, their health, all of that good stuff, right? Well, the line of sight tool is if you hold L, you can drag from any hex to another hex to see if you have line of sight. If you have a single white line pointing, then line of sight exists, right? So if at least one white line means line of sight exists. So if, at the moment from that tile here, there are 3 points of line of sight. Okay. So what we can do with the archer is we can have a look to see what can you currently see. So you can see here that can see the brute. You can just about see the brute there. Can see my tinkerer. What you can do is you can do clever things, whereas you can actually run away into corners to prevent and break line of sight, forcing these guys to have to move even more or not be able to perform an attack at all. So archer line of sight, as you can see, if we would just move 1 hex back, no line of sight at all, meaning that this archer might not even attack on the next turn. So we'll keep that in mind here as we deal with it. So that was kind of rough. I think we're just going to go for the we're probably just going to go for provoking roar on this and then kind of run away a little bit. That was a little bit scary. And what I want to try and do is I want to try and heal my brute a little bit. So we will try and line of sight this archer. Oh, I see. Draw the 15 again. So dangerous. All right. Well, luckily we played our 10 then. And the archer, you see it's got range 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it can't actually get us right now. So we'll actually stay where we are, I think. Because the archer can't get us. Because it's not moving. If it was moving, we might consider doing that. So we'll just stay where we are for now. It doesn't get his attack, which is nice. What I'll do actually is I will attack here first. And that means that I can walk onto it. You don't want to... ranged attacks have disadvantage if you are adjacent to the enemy. So bear in mind with ranged attacks, just try to not perform them next to the target that you're trying to attack. Because that means you have to draw 2 modifiers and take the worst, giving you a greater opportunity and chance to draw that -2 and that miss as well. So keep that in mind. So now that that banner archer didn't really do anything, we're in a really good position. We can just sort of run, hopefully, into this next room and start to kind of deal with him. I can't quite get to him with my Tinkerer, which is a little bit of a shame. So we could go for the move 4. We could go for the hook gun and try and maybe pull them 1, 2, 3, 4 onto this trap, which is 3 damage. That would be quite good. Then we could potentially use warding strength and overwhelming assault with our boots to do the second part of that and push them onto that trap. So let's see if this works out. 29 initiative. That does mean we're going to be taking a hit here. A little bit unfortunate. We may as well use our goggles here because we're not going to be attacking again. Or at least we're only going to be attacking this. We may as well use that. Oh, I got into the trap. Traps are your best friend in Gloomhaven. Make sure to use them. Trap damage goes through shields as well, so it's a really good way to kill high shield enemies. Traps count as what we call like pure damage or true damage in Gloomhaven. So I don't even need to perform the attack here. I could just use my boots, go to here and push them directly through that trap there. Which is what I'll do, because neither of these 2 things give me XP, so sort of makes sense. So we'll go here, we'll skip this, and we'll push you to there. Easy. Okay, so if you were playing like with 3 mercenaries, 4 mercenaries, there is a lot more enemies you need to deal with. I think there's like 5 bandits in this room. There's 3 archers at the back here. Like there's an elite bandit guard. So like the main difference here between playing 2 versus playing 3 and 4, I did do a comparisons video, which you'll have to search my channel for it. I'm going to try and I might have time to edit it and put it in here, but that shows you like the difference that it could make. And if you play this on 2, it will be a lot easier. So if you're playing solo, honestly, just play it with 2. to begin with. And then if you feel like adding extra mercenaries, add them on after this scenario. You can always add extra mercenaries later on in the game. That's no problem. So we're pretty much on a rest here. I don't have a great turn, so I will just long rest again, just to try and sync everybody up. I'm immobilized anyway, so I can't move. So really, I couldn't go and get that loot, so I may as well just long rest as well. Okay. So Spare Dagger is a really nice ability, so I might keep that for now. Notice as well how I'm not concentrating too much on getting XP. I'm usually of the feeling that the XP will come. I'm usually not too focused on XP. I think when you're playing solo, you should be less focused on earning XP because it will just come with time and as reward for completing experiences. But if you're playing multiplayer, it's maybe something that you would focus on a little bit more because you can give each character a little bit more attention to detail. So Warding Strength is an interesting one. Could be quite good in the last room. Obviously, the rest of these guys are pretty good. I think Overwhelming Assault sort of fine for one big attack at the end, maybe. And... but then I could just use Balance Measure. Let's get through this. And we'll get rid of Hookgun. Hookgun has done its thing. Right, so in the last room, I really want to focus on hitting a couple of big attacks, hopefully, with my Tinkerer, with like Ink Bomb, Net Shooter. They could be really good. In fact, opening the room with Net Shooter on could be a really good thing to do. So what I will do is I will open the door with a move 2, which I will use Reinvigorating Elixir for. And we'll do another really late move into Balanced Measure again. This combination of these two things with boots is really, really good. Really, really good. I haven't even had to use my trample yet, which I'm very, very happy about. So we'll open this like this. Reveal yourselves.
Kicking through the door. Nothing.
So you see we got a new enemy type here. We got Living Bones. Living Bones can be really annoying because they generally attack like 2 targets. They have this target 2, which they get to basically attack 2 things at once. What this means is if you don't separate yourselves, then they will basically always find the gaps in between you and go and attack 2 of you. So the best way of dealing with Living Bones really is to split up. And then don't worry about them. They do heal themselves a lot as well, which means that they can be a bit tricky and they end up staying on the board for longer than you would hope. So in terms of enemies to kill here, the high priority enemies are the archers in this round, because if we have a look and see what's happening, this Living Bones is just attacking for 3, target 2. They are not moving. So my Immobilize is kind of wasted here. It's not really going to do anything against these guys. The archers, however, are going to move, and they have range 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to be able to get both of them are going to be able to attack my Tinkerer here for where I am. So a little bit dodgy, but because we have played this, it is the end. Really, we just want to be doing damage here. So I am going to be using it against both of these guys. Oh, drew the ×2. Nice. So absolutely worth it there because we killed one enemy and we got another enemy really, really low. So although you would, of course, like to try and target 3 things there, that was a really good use of that card in that situation. Okay, that hurts a lot. It's almost as bad as the ×2 draw. Now, this is a situation where you could consider, should I take 5 damage or burn a card? Now, I've got one more attack to take, right? And it's 3. So if I take 5... the chances are that I'm going to be burning a card, right? Because unless this guy draws, a -2 or a miss, essentially, I am going to be burning a card anyway. So in this situation, because the first draw was a +2, this guy could draw a ×2, right? That would suck. But I think we'll play the odds here. We'll burn 1 card for that. We'll burn Harmless Contraption and hope. There you go. So we ended up with a little bit more health. So that's a good example of how sometimes you might want to burn a card a little bit earlier. Because, of course, I did so much damage. And you know now that actually I want to try and avoid that. Right. So we should hopefully be able to kill one of these archers here. This would have been a really good skewer position. But we haven't really lined that up. Nice. So even with the -1 draw there, we get the kill. This shows you how good Balanced Measure and Grab and Go can be. So, like, that was yes, we took a damage on our Tinkerer, and our Tinkerer had to burn a card there, which was a little bit unfortunate. But we've actually really, you know, we've done a lot in this. And to be honest, now, at this point in time, I would be looking at this room going, right, let's loot it. Let's loot it as much as we can. Because we're going to be... This should be a very easy finish to this scenario now. Very, very easy. You've also got a chest here. If you get this chest, you get a side scenario. So definitely worth picking up this chest if you can. So do I have a big loot on any of these? I think grab and go is my loot 1, right? So I might actually want a short rest and use grab and go here. It's a bit of an awkward one, but I think I will. So we'll redraw just so that I can use the top of grab and go, because then I can basically like move. I can loot all of this, and then I can maybe go and get that chest as well, which would be really good. See, we're very much... There you go. Iron Helm doing work. So we'll start just looting now. Really good opportunity to loot. So we'll loot here. So we're going to end up with a good amount of gold at the end of this. Enough gold to be able to get ourselves that, that Warhammer that we couldn't quite afford. To be honest, in this situation, I would just, like, I'm just going to end the scenario, but you could, for example, you could farm the loot a little bit more if you wanted to. You could farm experience points a little bit if you wanted to. Like, it's a good, like, I could just use the bottom of skewer to move 6 here, use this to move 4 just to get 2 XP, right? There are lots of things I can do just to try and get a little bit of extra XP, which I will do. I'll do that. I'll move 4 there. Waste of that card, of course, but we got 2 XP. We got the chest. We got Arcane Library was the side scenario we drew. This is a random side scenario. It comes from the side scenario deck, so it will be probably different for you. So I think we'll just grow and get some loot here. 2. Get an extra round, which is quite nice. Right, immobilize sucks, so we'll burn 2 cards here to get the kill, and what we'll do is we'll just run over there and get some more loot. Nice and simple. Tinkerer taking a bit of a batter in there, but this is a good example of how we can just get a little bit more XP at the end of a scenario. This is the kind of thing that once you played a little bit more, you'd get more comfortable with. I should have short rested there to get the. I could have done a loot 1 with grab and go if I'd short rested. That was a bit of hindsight there. So they're all just 2 gold, aren't they? I think they are. So could have got myself an extra 4 gold there if I'd short rested and got grab and go. But there you go. And there it is. So that's Black Barrow done for you.
You take a moment to catch your breath.
Hopefully that was useful, doing that kind of like walk through that. We didn't do too bad. Got a really good amount of loot. We did actually end up doing this. You notice how we ended up doing this and I wasn't even thinking about it? I really wasn't. Like, it just happened. You know? Like, I did not focus on these. I don't think I even spoke about them once, and we did it. And that's the kind of thing that, like, with battle goals over time, like, that's how personally I end up sort of going, oh, that was nice. I actually did it. Sometimes you want to focus on it a bit more, of course. And I think if you're playing multiplayer, you definitely want to focus on it a little more because it's just another thing for you to do with your character. But solo, I didn't think about it. I ended up getting my perk points. Very nice, clean. Got a good amount of gold out of the scenario too. The XP is maybe a little bit low, but not too shabby, I would say. So yeah, there you go. There's Black Barrow. Quest complete. We got Burning Mountain, Arcane Library. So Burning Mountain we actually got from the road event. So that was the quest that we got from the road event. And we can either continue on to Barrow Lair here, or you can go back to Gloomhaven. Because we have some gold, I would probably consider going back to Gloomhaven. If you wanted to buy something, you can't buy anything unless you're in Gloomhaven, or you can't level up as well unless you're in Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven also allows you to resolve a city event, a city encounter. I would always encourage people to do these because they're generally positive for the players and will help progress your game on. So there's very little reason to not return to Gloomhaven unless you're speedrunning. If you're speedrunning, then you go straight to it. But generally speaking, there's very little reason to not go back because players can then check out their cards, maybe take a breather, you know, do a city encounter. If you wanted to buy anything, you can. Even if you don't, it's worth it just to do the city encounter, in my opinion. Okay, well, there you go. That's hopefully a good start. I don't want to go much longer than that because I realize this video has already gone really, really long. But hopefully that gives you a really good sort of guide on how to at least beat Black Barrow and then go away. Barrow Lair is a really is a boss mission. My advice for Barrow Lair is concentrate on killing the boss as fast as possible. The more doors that boss opens, the worse the scenario becomes. If he opens 3 doors, the scenario is still beatable. If he opens that 4th door, I think you'll find it very hard to actually beat that scenario unless you are a very experienced, seasoned player. So try and kill him before he opens door number 3. That's like the sweet spot. If you do that, you should have a nice, good scenario. If he opens that 3rd door, that's when you're on the kind of like you're on the teetering point. He opens that 4th door, that's when it can become very hard for new players to win. So I would go about it that basis. Try and kill him before he opens that 3rd and 4th door. And there you go. And that's hopefully some advice. So thank you all so much for watching a bit of a different video. I just want to do it all in one take. I just wanted to show you like brass tacks. This is kind of like how I would go about doing it. Some good newbie advice. Hopefully you find it useful. If you have been playing the game for free this week, because it was free on Epic, it still is when I'm recording this, it's free on Epic Game Store. Go check it out on Epic Game Store to get yourself a free copy. Add it to your library. You'll have it forever. You can cross-play it with Steam as well, so worth considering. If you've got Steam friends already playing it, don't worry, you can still buddy up and play with them. But apart from that, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.
I think still, yeah.
Oh,
Scout
that's the blessing from Jam.
Yeah.
That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital version?